Kale stepped off the shuttle and onto the metallic floor of the Citadel. The air smelled faintly of ozone and machinery. His boots made a soft echo with every step as he moved forward, and his eyes scanned the vast hall ahead. Tall, sleek walls stretched up into shadow, lit by panels of cold, blue light that flickered occasionally. The Citadel was enormous, larger than any station he had ever visited, and the hum of energy running through its corridors made the air feel alive. His arms were crossed instinctively over his chest. The scars that covered them were long, jagged lines of pale skin against darker flesh, each marking a story of battles and survival. He had earned them, every one of them. They weren't just injuries, they were reminders of what humans could endure. He adjusted the strap of the bag over his shoulder and took a steadying breath. Today was not a day for weakness. As he approached the entryway, a low hum grew louder. The scanner ahead, a massive oval of polished metal, began to glow. Its lights ran along circuits embedded into the walls, moving with a strange intelligence and then fixed on him. Instantly, alarms blared, sharp and urgent, echoing through the Citadel's vast halls. Kale froze for a moment, his heart beating faster, but his face remained calm. The guards appeared quickly, emerging from side corridors. Their uniforms were gray with dark trim, and each carried a long energy rifle. They didn't move aggressively at first, but their fingers hovered near triggers, and their eyes scanned him with suspicion. Kale could feel their tension, like a tight cord stretched across the hall, ready to snap. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, in a gesture of peace. "I am not here to fight," he said clearly. His voice sounded small against the Citadel's enormous structure, but it held a firm edge like steel beneath cloth. The scanner seemed to pulse, as if reacting to the tone of his voice. One of the guards, a woman with short brown hair, stepped slightly forward, her expression unreadable. The alarms kept ringing, but Kale didn't move. He let the scanners focus on him. The glowing lines of light danced across his scars, and for a moment he felt the strange sensation of being read, judged by something other than human eyes. His mind wandered for a second, recalling the many times he had walked into hostile territory. This was different. This was like the Citadel itself was alive, and it could sense everything about him. A faint mechanical voice sounded from the scanner. "Subject identified, anomaly detected." Kale's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't fully understand the language it was speaking, but the tone was clear enough. Suspicion. He shifted his stance, letting his feet shoulder-width apart. He had trained his body to remain calm in tense situations, and now it would be tested. The guard's eyes darted between him and the scanner. One of them whispered, probably to the officer in charge. Kale caught the word combatant, and frowned. They thought he was dangerous because of the scars. It was something he had faced many times before. Humans were always misjudged. The difference here was that he couldn't simply explain himself. The Citadel's security seemed almost alive, almost capable of thinking for itself. He stepped forward slowly, careful not to make sudden movements. "I am here to negotiate," he said again, louder this time. "I mean no harm." The words felt strange coming out of his mouth, simple and plain, yet somehow they carried weight. It was a truth he had lived his entire life by. Honesty and calm could sometimes pierce through the strongest barriers. One of the guard's fingers twitched near the trigger of her rifle, but she did not fire. Another stepped to the side, moving in a defensive pattern, eyes never leaving him. Kale noticed the patterns they formed instinctively, trained movements, careful calculations of potential threats. He admired the discipline even as it worked against him. Humans and aliens alike relied on instinct, but sometimes instinct misunderstood the real intent. The scanner's lights flickered again, brighter this time. It seemed almost to hesitate, pulsing with soft energy that made the floor vibrate slightly. Kale noticed that the light lingered over the scars on his arms, as if studying them in detail. He tensed for a moment, wondering what it could detect beyond the obvious. Was it reading damage or something else? Perhaps it could sense his history, every injury, every moment of survival. Kale's mind ran through possibilities. If the Citadel believed he was a threat, he might be stopped here. There were no second chances in places like this, no way to convince the scanners with words alone. He had to act carefully. Yet he also knew that fear could cloud judgment, and hesitation could be fatal. So he remained calm, letting the scanner take in every detail of him, every scar, every line of experience etched on his skin. Suddenly, a low mechanical click echoed through the hall, and the scanner's voice spoke again, slower this time. "Subject, please stand for verification." The words were simple, but there was an odd hesitation in the tone. Kale tilted his head slightly. The scanner wasn't immediately aggressive. It paused, almost as if curious. That curiosity was dangerous and powerful at the same time. Cale continued walking forward, slowly, deliberately. His boots made soft thuds against the metallic floor. He kept his hands visible and relaxed, showing no aggression. The guards moved with him, circling carefully, rifles ready but not firing. Every step was measured. He felt the weight of the Citadel's attention on him, like the building itself was breathing around him. Then he spoke again, his voice firm but calm. "I am Cale. I carry nothing but words and intentions. I am human. I seek only dialogue." The words were simple, plain English, but in them lay a confidence born of survival, of a life that had faced more danger than anyone here could imagine. For a moment, the scanner's lights dimmed and pulsed slowly, and Cale could swear he sensed recognition in its hum. The alarms slowed their rhythm, as though the Citadel itself was pausing to reconsider. The guards shifted slightly, unconsciously lowering their weapons just a fraction. The tension did not disappear, but it changed, from hostility to wary observation. Cale let a small breath out. He knew he was not completely safe, not yet. The Citadel was vast and complex, and it had many ways to judge humans. But he had taken the first step. He had survived the initial alarm, and that meant something. He took another step forward, his eyes scanning the hall for the next challenge, for the next moment that would test him. Every scar on his arms felt alive, telling their own story silently to anyone, or anything, observing. He did not flinch. The Citadel's sensors pulsed around him, reading the lines of his skin, perhaps reading the resilience of his body, the endurance of his spirit. And Cale knew deep down that this was just the beginning. With each step he took, the sound of his boots echoed through the hall, a reminder that humans, though small in this galaxy, carried weight. The Citadel had noticed him. It had felt his presence. And Cale, with every scar and every careful move, was proving something that words alone could not, that humanity, though battered and imperfect, could face anything and survive. Cale froze the moment the scanner whirred again, its lights flickering erratically as if it could not fully understand what it was seeing. The mechanical hum that had always been steady now carried an edge of hesitation. For a moment, the Citadel seemed to hold its breath, the enormous walls echoing the soft vibrations of the scanner's energy. Cale's own pulse quickened, but he did not move. He could feel the eyes of the guards on him, tense and ready, yet even they seemed momentarily caught off guard by what the scanner was doing. "Are you human?" the scanner finally asked, its voice mechanical but unusually hesitant. The words repeated in a slightly distorted tone, as though the question itself was unfamiliar, even awkward, for the machine to form. Cale blinked slowly, surprised and slightly amused. This was not what he had expected. No scanner had ever questioned his very nature before. Usually, the machines just judged, categorized, and decided, without hesitation, without curiosity. Cale's mind raced, thinking about what the question could mean. Was it confusion? Was the Citadel's AI encountering something in him it had never processed before? His scars, his posture, the steady calm in his voice. Did the scanner detect something beyond what the human eye could see? He looked down at his arms for a brief moment, at the pale streaks cutting through darker flesh, the evidence of survival, of hardship, of battles fought and won. Every line seemed suddenly significant, as if the scanner could read the story etched into his skin. The guards shifted uneasily. Mara, the officer with short brown hair who had been closest to him, whispered something to one of the others. Cale could not hear the words, but he caught the expression in her eyes, curiosity mixed with caution. The question from the scanner had thrown them off as much as it had him. Humans were expected to follow certain patterns, fight, flee, reason, or surrender, but the scanner seemed confused, struggling to assign him to a category. Cale cleared his throat. "I am human," he said, his voice calm but firm. He had spoken these words many times in his life, often to beings who doubted him because of appearance, because of race, because of species. But here, in this enormous alien citadel, the statement seemed heavier than ever. It carried weight not just for him but for the concept of humanity itself. The scanner paused again. Its lights dimmed slightly, then pulsed brighter, sweeping across Cale's face and arms in a careful, deliberate pattern. It was almost as if the machine was examining him, trying to find inconsistencies, weaknesses, or proof of some hidden identity. Cale's breath remained steady, though a small tension ran through his muscles. He could feel the way the Citadel seemed to watch him, the way it studied him as if he were an experiment. He was not just a visitor now, he was a test subject in a silent trial of existence. The hum of machinery filled the hall, a deep and vibrating sound that Cale felt in his chest. He had been in tense situations before, encounters with hostile aliens, negotiations in war zones, but nothing had ever felt like this. Nothing had ever questioned his very nature, his right to exist. And yet, Cale did not panic. He had survived worse, and he had learned that calm and steady action often spoke louder than weapons or force. Human, the scanner repeated, slower this time. It sounded almost thoughtful. Cale blinked, taken aback. Could a machine truly consider what it meant to be human? Could it pause and examine not just the physical form but the resilience, the spirit, the very essence that made him who he was? The thought made him shiver slightly, both with fear and anticipation. This was new territory. He was alone, surrounded by technology and beings whose understanding of humanity was limited at best, yet the question itself felt like a recognition. The guards were tense, but their weapons had lowered slightly. Mara stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "Explain yourself," she said softly, almost to herself. The scanner pulsed behind her, but did not interfere. Cale realized that he had a moment, perhaps a few minutes at most, to show them that he was not a threat. That he was indeed human, and that his presence carried no danger. He took a slow step forward, hands raised slightly in a non-threatening gesture. "I am Cale," he said, his voice even and clear. "I am human. I carry nothing but words and intentions. I am here to negotiate, to help. I do not wish to harm anyone." The words felt natural, though he knew that the aliens and the Citadel's systems may not fully understand the nuances. Human honesty was simple, yet it carried a power machines often overlooked. The scanner's lights flickered again, then swirled around him in a soft, almost hesitant motion. Cale could feel it probing, not violently but curiously, reading the lines of his scars, the tone of his voice, the steadiness of his stance. It lingered longer on his arms than on any other part of him, as if trying to understand what the scars meant. He knew. They were survival, endurance, proof of mistakes made and learned from. Perhaps, in a strange and alien way, the scanner recognized that. One of the guards, a younger man with short dark hair, leaned toward Mara. "Do you think it's confused?" he asked in a low voice. Mara did not answer immediately, her gaze fixed on Cale and the pulsing scanner lights. She seemed unsure. Confusion was dangerous in a place like this, where rules and protocols dominated. Yet here was a human, standing unarmed, calm, and yet somehow commanding attention. It was a situation that broke the usual patterns. Cale shifted slightly, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He let his eyes meet Mara's, then the eyes of the other guards. "I understand your caution," he said gently. "I would feel the same if the roles were reversed. But I am not here to fight. I am not here to cause harm. I am here because humans and your kind can find ways to work together." His words were simple, almost plain, but he hoped the sincerity would carry weight. The scanner's hum grew deeper, almost contemplative. Cale had faced judgment before, from beings who looked at his scars and saw weakness, from leaders who saw humans as disposable. But this time something was different. The scanner did not label him as a threat outright. It did not shout commands for him to stop or retreat. Instead, it asked a question that carried weight. "Are you human?" Not, "Are you dangerous?" or, "Are you authorized?" but, "Are you human?" The thought made Cale pause for a moment. It was strange, almost philosophical. He realized that the Citadel, for all its technology, for all its power and systems, might be encountering humanity for the first time in a way it could not classify. Perhaps the combination of his scars, his stance, and his calm presence made him something unusual, something that did not fit neatly into the Citadel's categories. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, stubborn, and adaptive, and maybe the scanner was beginning to notice. Cale exhaled slowly. He had faced doubt, suspicion, and judgment in every corner of the galaxy. Mara stepped forward, her boots clicking lightly against the metallic floor of the Citadel. She was the officer in charge, and her presence carried authority that the other guards respected instinctively. Her eyes were sharp, scanning Cale's every movement, yet she did not raise her weapon. Instead, she regarded him as if weighing the balance between threat and truth. The scanner behind her hummed steadily, its lights reflecting off the walls, pulsing in quiet rhythm with the energy that ran through the Citadel. "Explain yourself, human," she said firmly. Her voice was calm but carried steel beneath the surface, a warning that Cale should not test her patience. The words echoed softly against the high ceilings, mingling with the quiet hum of the machinery and the soft vibrations of the floor. Every guard present straightened slightly, sensing that this moment was critical. Cale's fate, and perhaps the perception of humanity in the eyes of the Citadel, seemed to hang on his next words. Cale held up his hands slowly and deliberately, palms open and clearly visible. He wanted to show that he carried no weapons, no tools of destruction, only words and intention. "I am Kale," he said, his voice even and calm. "I come in peace. I carry no harm. I am human and I am here to speak, not fight." The simplicity of his words was deliberate. He knew that in tense situations, clarity often mattered more than eloquence. Complicated explanations could be twisted or misunderstood, but simple truth had weight. Mara's eyes did not waver. She studied him with cautious intensity. "Your scars," she said, motioning toward his arms. "They are unusual. Why do you have so many? What do they mean?" There was no accusation in her voice, only a mixture of curiosity and professional concern. She had seen many humans before, but something about Kale's presence, combined with the scanner's reaction, made her want answers that went beyond standard protocol. Kale glanced down at his arms. The pale lines etched across his skin were reminders of survival, endurance, and lessons learned the hard way. Each one told a story of mistakes made, of pain endured, and of battles survived. "These scars," he said quietly, "are the marks of my life. They are proof that I have faced challenges and survived them. They are not weapons, not threats. They are lessons and memories. They are who I am." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Many had been trained to see scars as signs of danger or combat readiness, but Kale's calm demeanor contradicted their expectations. Mara, however, did not look away. She seemed to sense the weight behind his words, though she remained cautious. The scanner pulsed behind her, humming with quiet intensity as if it, too, were listening and processing more than the words alone could explain. Kale continued, stepping slightly forward but keeping his movements slow and measured. "I am here to negotiate," he said. "Humans have always found ways to survive. We learn, we adapt, and we endure. I'm not here to fight you or anyone else in this citadel. I am here because I believe that humans and your people can find understanding. We can help each other." His voice carried calm authority, born of years of surviving impossible situations. Mara studied him carefully. She was trained to detect lies, half-truths, and hidden intentions, and she could feel that Kale was telling the truth. Still, caution was necessary. "Why should we believe you?" she asked. "Why should we trust a stranger, a human, when the Citadel has rules for a reason? You are not authorized to enter these halls. Yet here you stand." Her tone was firm, demanding, but not hostile. She was testing him, trying to understand not just his words but his character. Kale's eyes met hers steadily. "Because trust begins with truth," he said simply. "I cannot demand your trust, but I can offer my honesty. I am human. I have scars, yes, but they are evidence of survival, not aggression. I come to speak, not to destroy. I ask only for the chance to prove it. I ask for the opportunity to show that humanity has value beyond fear and caution." The scanner pulsed again, this time brighter, almost impatiently. Its lights moved across his face and arms, as if examining not just the surface, but the intent behind his words. Kale felt it as a weight, a pressure, a silent test of his presence. The Citadel, with all its vastness and advanced technology, seemed alive in that moment, observing and judging simultaneously. He held his stance, refusing to give in to fear or frustration. Mara's expression softened just slightly, though she did not lower her guard. "You speak with confidence," she said. "And yet, humans are unpredictable. You carry danger simply by existing. Your kind has survived wars, yes, but you also carry the potential for destruction. How do I know that your intentions are pure?" Kale thought for a moment, then answered with a quiet firmness. "Because my actions are visible, not hidden. My hands are empty. I do not move to attack. I do not speak threats. My scars are proof of my past, yes, but they are also proof that I endure, that I learn. I'm not perfect, but I am honest. And in this moment, honesty is all I have to offer." He paused, letting his words settle in the hall. The guards shifted slightly, the tension in the air thick but manageable. Mara studied him closely, considering the scanner's reaction as well as his own demeanor. She had seen humans before, but something about Kale was different. Perhaps it was the combination of scars and calm, of vulnerability and confidence, that challenged the standard view. He was human, yes, but he was also more than the sum of his parts. He represented something that technology and protocol alone could not predict. The scanner's hum grew quieter, the pulsing lights slower, almost contemplative. Kale felt the subtle shift in the Citadel's atmosphere. It was as though the building itself, vast and powerful, had paused to consider him, to process the words and presence of a human in a way it rarely did. He did not smile, but he allowed himself a small sense of satisfaction. He had survived the first test of recognition and now came the second. Trust. Human, Mara said slowly, almost to herself. You are different than I expected. Her voice was quieter now, less commanding, more reflective. Kale nodded slightly. He did not need to speak further. The statement carried weight. Even a small acknowledgement from someone trained in caution and suspicion was a step forward. Kale stepped another small pace forward, maintaining open posture and calm demeanor. I know that humans are often misjudged, he said softly. We are strong, yes, but also flawed. We endure, yes, but we also make mistakes. And yet we persist. That is who we are. And that is why I am here, not to conquer, not to fight, but to show that humans can bring value, understanding, and cooperation, even in places like this. Mara did not reply immediately. She studied him silently, eyes scanning his face, his arms, his stance, the way he carried himself. Every detail mattered. The guards remained tense but less hostile than before. The scanner's hum filled the air, steady but with an almost gentle rhythm. Kale felt the shift subtly, the change in energy around him. He knew that for the first time in this hall, his presence was not simply seen as a threat. He exhaled slowly, keeping his movements deliberate. I am ready to answer any questions you have, he said. I will not hide, I will not deceive. I will show that my kind humanity is more than what fear and suspicion might suggest. We endure. We survive. And we are capable of reason, honesty, and understanding. Mara finally nodded, a slight but meaningful gesture. It did not erase the caution, but it acknowledged that she recognized the truth in his words, the calm in his demeanor, and the honesty in his presence. The guards relaxed slightly, though they did not lower their weapons completely. The scanner pulsed softly behind her, as if approving in its own mechanical way. Kale knew he had passed a crucial moment. The Citadel had questioned his nature, examined him, judged him, and for the first time he had not been rejected outright. He was human, yes, but he was also respected for his honesty and calm, for his willingness to stand unarmed and speak truth in a place designed to test weakness and threat. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then Mara spoke again, her voice quieter now, almost thoughtful. Very well, she said. We will hear what you have to say. But understand this, every word, every action from now on will be watched. Do not give us reason to regret this decision. Kale nodded once. I understand, he said. And I will not give you cause for regret. I am here to speak, to share, and to build understanding. That is all I seek. The guards relaxed further, though still vigilant. The scanner's lights pulsed one final time, steady and calm. Kale allowed himself a small, private smile. For now he had survived. For now he had earned the chance to speak. And in a place as vast and intimidating as the Citadel, that was the first victory a human could hope for. Kale stepped into the larger chamber of the Citadel, a vast hall lined with shining panels and humming machinery. The floor beneath him reflected his figure, fractured by the glow of pulsing lights. The guards fell back slightly, forming a cautious circle around him as Mara remained near the scanner, her expression tense but curious. Kale could feel the weight of the Citadel's attention on him, not just from the living guards, but from the AI itself. Its presence was almost tangible, a silent observer woven into every panel, every glowing line, every hum of energy running through the enormous structure. The scanner's hum changed as he approached. Its lights brightened, swept across his arms, across his face, and lingered on his scars as if reading every mark. Kale noticed it immediately, the pulsing energy seemed deliberate, probing. Then the mechanical voice spoke softly, almost as if to itself, analyzing, subject DNA, a subject history, anomalies detected. The words were precise, technical, but there was a pause, a hesitation that seemed unusual for the scanner. Kale held still. His arms hung at his sides, revealing the full extent of his scars. Each line, each mark told the story of survival, of mistakes, of lessons learned, of pain endured and overcome. The scanner's lights followed the lines, pulsing along them in a rhythm that almost felt like curiosity. Kale's lips curved into a faint smile. The machine was studying him, trying to understand why he existed in the form that he did, why humans bore the marks of life so visibly yet persisted so strongly. It adapts, survives, the scanner whispered. The words echoed faintly through the hall, as though the AI was acknowledging something beyond mere analysis. Kale raised an eyebrow slightly, surprised at the phrasing. The machine's tone was strange, almost reverent in its simple observation. It seemed to recognize that humans were different, not in a way of immediate danger, but in a way of resilience that no protocol could fully categorize. Mara shifted her stance, glancing at the scanner with unease. Did it just say that? She asked, her voice low. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. Machines didn't speak like that. They didn't make observations about life or adaptation. They gave commands, processed data, and made decisions, but this was unusual. Kale nodded slowly. He could sense the recognition. The Citadel's AI had seen many forms of life, many species, many patterns, but something in him, in humans, had triggered a new understanding. He stepped a little closer to the scanner, keeping his hands open and visible. Yes, he said softly, almost to himself. We endure. We survive. That is what it means to be human. Our scars, our failures, our mistakes, they are not weaknesses. They are proof that we continue, that we adapt, that we do not give up. His voice echoed slightly, the simplicity of the words carrying weight in the quiet, vast chamber. The scanner's lights pulsed again, faster this time, sweeping over him repeatedly. Subject resilience, unmatched, adapts, survives, anomaly acknowledged. It continued, its words precise, mechanical, yet somehow thoughtful. Kale could almost feel its recognition settling, like a quiet respect forming inside the circuits and sensors. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they endured, and this particular human, scarred, calm, deliberate, exemplified that endurance in a way that even the AI could not ignore. Mara's eyes met Kale's. It's not common, she said carefully, for it to react this way. It's acknowledging something about you. Kale nodded. Humans have always been underestimated, he said simply. We are fragile, yes, compared to some. But we learn, we adapt, we survive. That is our strength. Not raw power, not speed, not technology, but the ability to endure, to keep going when others would fail. The guards shifted uncomfortably. They had been trained to respect protocol, to rely on standard procedures, to judge by appearance and known data. But Kale's words, combined with the scanner's unusual response, disrupted all their assumptions. One of the younger guards whispered to his companion, "It's almost like it respects him." The other shook his head, unsure whether that was possible, yet the subtle changes in the AI's behavior were undeniable. Kale smiled faintly again, glancing down at his arms. The scars that covered his skin were proof, silent and undeniable, of a life that had survived countless dangers. Every mark had a story, every healed wound a lesson. He had faced enemies, harsh environments, and countless challenges. Each time he had learned, adapted, and endured. And now, even the AI, the Citadel itself, seemed to recognize that human resilience was something remarkable. The scanner's hum shifted, becoming quieter, almost contemplative. Its lights circled slowly, like it was processing something far beyond simple physical data. Kale realized that the AI might be forming its first real understanding of human life as a concept, rather than just a series of measurable traits. Humans were unpredictable. Humans survived. Humans adapted. That combination, in the eyes of this machine, was perhaps extraordinary. He straightened his shoulders and looked around the chamber. Mara and the guards watched him closely, yet the tension that had gripped the room earlier had eased. The scanner pulsed softly, steadily, as if acknowledging that its assessment was complete. Kale felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had survived, not through force or threats, but through honesty, calm, and the undeniable proof of human endurance displayed on his own skin. Mara took a cautious step forward. "It's remarkable," she said quietly. "I've seen humans before, but it rarely registers like this. Usually it categorizes us, predicts behavior, then moves on. But you, it seems to recognize something about your kind. Something deeper." Kale nodded, keeping his hands open and still. "Our kind endures," he said simply. "That is all it needs to know. That is all that matters. Our survival, our persistence, our willingness to face the impossible, that is what humans are." The AI pulsed one final time, then the scanner's hum slowed to its usual rhythm. The hall returned to its normal ambient energy, but the subtle shift in the air remained. Kale could feel it. Even the guards seemed to recognize it, though they did not fully understand what had occurred. Something about humans had been acknowledged, something beyond the normal protocols and algorithms of the Citadel's systems. Kale allowed himself a small smile, quiet and private. He knew the moment was significant. Not because it guaranteed safety or approval, but because the AI, the Citadel itself, had recognized that humans were more than data points, more than unpredictable variables. Humans endured. Humans adapted. Humans survived. And this recognition, even in a machine, was extraordinary. He took another step forward, letting the pulse of the Citadel's energy wash over him. Mara studied him again, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. She did not speak, but her silence carried a new weight. The AI had acknowledged him and by extension his species. The guards remained alert, yet the previous tension had eased. Kale had passed another test, not a physical one but a test of perception, of recognition. Kale's mind wandered briefly, thinking of the humans back on distant colonies. They had endured harsh environments, hostile species, and endless challenges. They had survived wars, famines, and natural disasters. And yet, even here, in the heart of a powerful alien citadel, human resilience shone through, undeniable and persistent. The scars that covered him were small, simple reminders of a far larger truth. Humans survived where others might have fallen. The scanner pulsed softly again as if in agreement. Kale straightened, feeling a quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. Mara finally nodded slightly. "You've proven something," she said carefully. "Something unusual even for your kind. The scanner seems to recognize it." Kale nodded once, calm and steady. "It does. And it should. Humans endure. That is our way. That is our strength. That is who we are." The hall remained quiet, the scanner's soft hum the only sound, punctuated by the occasional shuffle of the guards. Kale's smile was faint but genuine. In this moment he had not only survived scrutiny, but he had also reminded the Citadel, and perhaps himself, of the simple, undeniable truth: humans endure. They survive. And no machine, no protocol, no alien judgment could ever take that away. He glanced around the chamber one final time, feeling the hum of the Citadel, the gaze of the guards, and the quiet acknowledgement of the AI. For the first time he felt a connection, not of control or dominance but of mutual recognition. Humanity had been seen in all its flawed, scarred, enduring glory. And that recognition, even from a machine, was a victory in itself. Kale's smile widened faintly as he looked at his arms, at the pale scars that told the story of his life. The scanner's soft hum seemed almost approving. He had endured, adapted, survived, and now even the Citadel recognized it. That simple acknowledgement carried more weight than any weapon, any plan, any speech ever could. Humanity mattered. They persisted. They survived. And in this vast alien place, that truth had finally been seen. The tension in the Citadel hall was heavy, like the air itself was waiting for a signal. Kale felt it shift slightly as the scanner continued its subtle hum, its lights pulsing steadily, almost rhythmically, across the polished metal walls. The guards, who had been tense and ready moments before, began to relax slowly. Their rifles, once aimed directly at him, lowered inch by inch. Mara, the officer who had questioned him earlier, stood firm but nodded slightly, the smallest of gestures that carried immense weight. Kale understood the meaning immediately. The path forward was now open. "You may proceed," Mara said finally, her voice calm but commanding. The words seemed simple, yet they echoed throughout the hall, bouncing off the metallic surfaces and reaching every corner. Kale allowed himself a quiet exhale, knowing that this moment, small as it seemed, was significant. The Citadel had not only allowed him passage, it had acknowledged his presence, recognized his human resilience, and trusted him enough not to treat him as an immediate threat. The guards remained vigilant, their eyes scanning the hall and Kale's movements, but there was a difference in their posture. They had not completely let go of their training, yet a cautious respect had begun to form. Kale walked forward slowly, deliberately, each step measured, each movement clear and calm. His boots clicked softly against the metallic floor, and the sound echoed like a heartbeat in the vast, silent space. Every step was proof that he was human, and more than that, proof that humans endured. The scanner's lights followed him as he moved, sweeping over his scars and the steady determination in his stance. It pulsed softly, almost contemplative, as if it were studying him with interest rather than suspicion. Kale could feel the subtle pressure of its observation, yet it no longer carried the threat of alarm. Instead, it seemed curious, almost approving in a mechanical way. Every scar, every line, every small imperfection of his body told a story of survival, and now the Citadel itself seemed to acknowledge it. Mara walked a few steps behind him, her posture relaxed slightly, but her eyes never left him. She was a professional, trained to notice deception, aggression, and hidden danger. Yet Kale sensed that even she was beginning to recognize something unique in him. Perhaps it was his calmness, his honesty, or the undeniable presence of human endurance. She did not speak, but the nod she had given was enough. Kale understood that he had earned a small but important trust. The hall stretched ahead, wide and imposing. The walls were lined with panels of soft glowing energy, their surfaces alive with pulsing lines that seemed to move like veins of light. Kale took careful steps, letting his senses take in the details: the hum of machinery beneath the floor, the soft flicker of light across the high ceiling, the distant echoes of moving patrols and other corridors. Every detail reminded him that this place was alive in its own way. It was not merely a building but a living system, watching, analyzing, and now subtly acknowledging him. He walked with the weight of his past behind him, the scars on his arms a visible testament to battles fought and survived. They were marks of endurance, and as he moved, he realized that they carried authority in this hall, not because they were frightening, but because they represented human persistence. He had survived countless situations where logic and force alone were insufficient. He had endured, adapted, and continued. And now, in the Citadel, the same principle applied. The guards flanked him on either side, weapons still visible but lowered, their postures a mix of vigilance and cautious respect. They whispered occasionally among themselves, their voices low, carrying uncertainty but also fascination. Humans they seemed to recognize were different. Not predictable, not easily categorized, and yet persistent in ways that technology and protocols could not fully measure. Kale could feel their curiosity, and it made him smile faintly inside. Respect, he knew, was earned through endurance, honesty, and calm, qualities humans often carried in spite of appearances. The Citadel's scanner continued to follow him, its lights pulsing softly, scanning his movements, his posture, and the patterns of his scars. Kale walked carefully, deliberately, aware that every detail mattered. Yet he moved naturally, not stiff or forced. Each step he took was a quiet declaration. Humans endure, humans survive, humans persist in the face of challenge. He could feel the subtle acknowledgement from the AI, a recognition that perhaps no machine had given to a human before. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly as she observed him. She had seen countless species and life forms, some more dangerous, some less so, but Kale carried a presence that was different. Not threatening, yet commanding in its own quiet way. She could not explain why, but every step he took reinforced a subtle truth. Humans carried resilience that could not be measured by scanners, rules, or brute force. It was something instinctive, something profound, and now the Citadel seemed to recognize it too. Kale's mind wandered briefly to the humans he had left behind on distant colonies. They too endured hardships unimaginable to most species. They survived natural disasters, alien attacks, harsh environments, and political strife. And yet, humanity persisted, not through strength alone, but through adaptability, ingenuity, and determination. Each scar, each small victory was a lesson learned, a reminder that humans did not surrender easily. As he walked through the hall, he realized that the same principles applied here. Even in an alien citadel, humans were resilient. The scanner pulsed brighter for a moment, sweeping across him with deliberate precision. Kale felt a quiet acknowledgement in its hum, a recognition of the truth he carried. Mara shifted slightly, her expression thoughtful, and the guard's whispers softened. For the first time, Kale felt that his presence had meaning beyond simple survival. He was not just a visitor. He was a representation of his species, a living proof of human endurance, and the Citadel itself seemed to understand that, at least in part. As he continued, he noticed small details of the Citadel's design that suggested both function and intelligence. Energy lines pulsed beneath the floor, panels adjusted their brightness automatically, and the walls themselves seemed to respond subtly to his movements. It was as if the entire building was alive, observing him, learning from him, adapting to his presence. Kale could feel it, a quiet hum that was both intimidating and strangely reassuring. This place was powerful, yes, but it was also capable of recognition and understanding, even if only in its own mechanical way. He took a moment to glance back at Mara. She met his eyes briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. She did not lower her guard completely, but she had allowed him the first real freedom in this hall, a sign of trust that Kale did not take lightly. He nodded slightly, a small gesture of gratitude. It was not permission but recognition, and in a place like the Citadel, that was worth far more than words. The guards flanked him as he approached the central corridor, their steps synchronized but careful, matching his pace. The scanner's lights pulsed rhythmically, sweeping over him in a slow, deliberate pattern. Kale could sense that it was processing him in real time, observing his movements, noting the confidence in his posture, the calm in his breathing, the visible proof of survival etched into his scars. Every step he took was a message: humans endure, humans adapt, humans persist. As he walked, Kale allowed his mind a small moment of reflection. He thought of every human who had come before him, every challenge overcome, every scar earned, every life preserved. He thought of his own journey, the battles, the injuries, the moments when he had been pushed to the brink. And he realized that all of it had prepared him for this. Not a fight, not a negotiation, but a moment where humanity itself was quietly acknowledged in the heart of the Citadel. The scanner pulsed softly once more as if in approval, and Kale smiled faintly. The recognition was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Mara stepped aside slightly, allowing him to move forward with fewer obstructions, her posture still professional but less rigid. The guards relaxed slightly, their attention still sharp but no longer tense with immediate suspicion. Kale had survived another test, and in doing so, had carried human resilience into a place where few expected it to be seen or valued. He continued down the corridor, each step measured, deliberate, and calm. The halls stretched endlessly, filled with humming machinery and pulsing lights, yet the atmosphere felt different than before. The tension that had dominated his entry had eased. Recognition had replaced fear, curiosity had replaced suspicion. Even the Citadel itself, in its mechanical and intelligent way, seemed to understand that he was human, and that his species had value, endurance, and persistence that could not be measured by simple scans or protocols. Kale walked forward quietly, the sound of his boots echoing softly. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture calm. He carried more than just himself through the Citadel's corridors. He carried the essence of humanity, the proof that humans endure, survive, and persist in the face of challenges that would stop many others. Mara and the guards observed him, the scanner followed him, and Kale felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that he had made an impression, small but lasting, in a place designed to measure threat, not endurance. In that moment, Kale understood something profound. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they also carried something extraordinary: the ability to survive, to endure, and to adapt in ways that even the most advanced machines could not fully comprehend. And as he walked forward, carrying the weight of that understanding silently on his shoulders, he knew that his journey through the Citadel was only beginning, and that humanity's presence, even in this alien place, had already made itself known. Kale stepped into the council chamber, a room larger than any hall he had seen in the Citadel so far. The walls were smooth metal, glowing faintly with a soft, bluish light. Tall, angular figures sat in high-backed chairs that lined the room, their faces partially obscured by masks and shadows. The air was thick with quiet authority. Every sound of his boots against the metallic floor echoed in the enormous space, a reminder that every movement here was observed, every gesture judged. The guards flanking him stayed back, their weapons lowered but their eyes alert. Mara walked beside him, her posture professional, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor, respect, cautious but present. Kale knew that he had passed all the initial tests of the Citadel. The scanner had recognized his presence, the guards had ceased treating him as an immediate threat, and Mara had allowed him the freedom to step into the council chamber without interference. Yet this was the moment that truly mattered. This was the moment to show that humanity carried something beyond fear and suspicion, something that could not be measured by scans or algorithms alone. The council members leaned forward slightly, their masks tilting as they observed him. Their hands rested on sleek consoles before them, fingers hovering as if ready to act on his words, or to silence him if necessary. Kale stepped to the center of the room, stopping deliberately, showing no aggression, only presence. He lifted his arms slightly, revealing the scars that ran across them, the visible history of survival, endurance, and lessons learned the hard way. Every mark, every line was a story, a testament to the human spirit. He took a steady breath, letting his calm confidence set the tone. "I am Kale," he began. His voice carried clearly, echoing slightly off the chamber walls. "I am human. I have survived battles, challenges, and hardship. I have scars that tell stories, but they also show something more: resilience, endurance, and the will to keep going no matter the obstacle. That is humanity. That is what we bring to the galaxy." The council members exchanged quiet, subtle glances. Kale could sense their curiosity, their analytical minds turning over his words. They had seen many species and individuals, some strong, some intelligent, some dangerous, but humans were different. The scanner in the corner, which had been quietly observing since his entry, pulsed softly now, its lights slower, more deliberate. Its hum was steady, almost contemplative. It had moved from suspicion to recognition, from analysis to respect. Kale noticed it, the faintest satisfaction settling inside him. He continued, stepping slowly toward a small holographic panel that projected the layout of the Citadel and nearby human colonies. "We have faced challenges that would have destroyed others," he said. "Yet we endure. We adapt. We survive. And through that survival we have learned. We can bring knowledge, cooperation, and problem-solving to this galaxy. We do not act recklessly, nor do we seek to dominate. We act because we persist, because we endure, and because we care about more than ourselves. The council members leaned forward further, silent but attentive. Their body language suggested evaluation. They were not yet convinced, but they were listening. Kale knew that this moment required not just words, but presence, evidence of the truth behind them. He lifted his arms slightly again, letting the scars speak as well. They were not threats, not weapons, not signs of aggression. They were proof of survival, endurance, and lessons learned. They were human resilience made visible. The scanner whirred quietly in the corner, its lights flicking slowly over the room, occasionally returning to Kale. It had shifted, he realized, from an observer of danger to an observer of character. It had measured his scars, his DNA, his posture, his calmness, and it had reached a conclusion that even the council could not yet articulate fully. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but also persistent, capable of surviving and learning in ways that were almost impossible to quantify. Mara watched Kale closely, noting the scanner's subtle acknowledgement and the council's careful attention. She knew that the Citadel valued strength, intelligence, and obedience, yet here was a human who demonstrated a different kind of power, resilience, honesty, and calm authority. It was not raw force, not speed, not advanced technology, but the undeniable weight of experience and survival. She could feel it in the room, in the pause between statements, in the subtle hum of the Citadel itself. Kale spoke again, his tone steady, calm, and deliberate. We are humans. We make mistakes, yes. We can fail, yes. But we endure. We adapt. We survive. And in that endurance, we have learned that cooperation, understanding, and honesty are often stronger than any weapon. We bring that to you now not as a threat but as a chance to work together. The council members exchanged glances again, their subtle movements indicating evaluation. Kale felt no impatience or anxiety. He had faced moments far more dangerous than this, and he had survived them. He trusted the strength that humanity had carried him through, and now he allowed it to speak on his behalf. The scanner, which had been quietly observing in the corner, pulsed softly, almost reverently. It seemed to recognize the truth of his words and the presence of his species. He raised his hand slowly and touched one of his scars, running his fingers along a line that marked an injury from long ago. These scars, he said softly, almost to himself but loud enough for the council to hear, are proof. Proof that we endure, proof that we survive. Each scar is a lesson, a story, a reminder that failure is not the end. And that is why humans matter. We survive. We adapt. We endure. And that endurance gives us value beyond what any scan or algorithm can measure. A faint silence followed, the weight of his words settling over the chamber. The council seemed to consider them carefully, the masked faces unreadable, yet the body language was subtly more open. Even the guards, who had been vigilant and tense, relaxed slightly. The scanner pulsed once more, slowly, deliberately, as if in agreement. Kale felt it in the hum of energy around the chamber. The recognition was not just from the council, not just from Mara, not just from the guards, but even from the Citadel itself. He stepped slightly forward, his voice calm and firm. I am here to show you that humans are capable, not of mindless destruction, but of endurance, cooperation, and innovation. We carry our history on our bodies, in our scars, in our experiences. And every time we survive, we prove that our existence matters. That our presence can bring value, even in a galaxy full of danger and uncertainty. The council remained silent for a moment longer, absorbing the truth in his words. The scanner pulsed softly again, the light sweeping across Kale's figure, as if scanning not just his physical form, but the essence of what he represented. He could feel the quiet acknowledgement, the recognition that humans were not merely unpredictable variables in the galaxy, they were survivors, resilient and capable of persistence that no machine, no rule, no species could fully anticipate. Mara's eyes softened slightly, though her posture remained professional. She had witnessed enough to understand that Kale's presence, his calm, his honesty, and his scars were evidence of something extraordinary. Not just the survival of one human, but the persistence and resilience of a species. She nodded subtly, a silent acknowledgement of the truth Kale had brought into the chamber. Kale lowered his hand from his scar and took a slow, deliberate breath. He could feel the weight of the room's attention on him, yet he stood firm and calm. We survive, he said, his voice steady and clear. We endure. We adapt. And through that endurance we show that we matter. Not by force, not by dominance, but by persistence, honesty, and resilience. That is humanity. That is who we are. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment, the only sound the soft hum of the citadel and the faint click of machinery in the distance. Then the scanner pulsed once more, brighter and steadier than before, as if confirming everything he had said. The council remained thoughtful, the guards vigilant but no longer tense. Kale had passed the ultimate test. Not a test of strength or firepower, but a test of recognition, of understanding, and of the value of human resilience. Kale took one last look around the chamber, his fingers brushing lightly along the scars on his arms. He smiled faintly, quietly proud. In this moment he had not only survived scrutiny, but he had made a silent statement about the enduring strength of humanity. The Citadel had seen it, the Council had considered it, and even the scanner, the silent, calculating presence that had once questioned his nature, had finally acknowledged it. He stood tall, calm, and steady. "We survive," he whispered again, more to himself than anyone else. "We endure. We matter." And in that quiet statement, the weight of human persistence settled over the chamber, undeniable and strong, echoing softly through the vast hall. Humanity had been seen. Humanity had endured. And in the Citadel that truth would not be forgotten.